Exposed, 7 sinister secrets hidden in a haunted church and other terrifying true stories in the quaint yet eerie suburb of Millbrook Hollow. Beneath its pristine lawns and manicured hedges, lurked a presence that no one spoke of, an old church, long abandoned yet concealing dark secrets deeply rooted in the town's history. Whispers told of unspeakable horrors happening behind its cracked stained glass, where shadows twisted into nightmares. If anyone dared to tread too close, they might hear the chilling echo of lost souls. But when 12-year-old Jake and his 8-year-old sister Lily stumbled upon this decaying sanctuary one crisp autumn afternoon, their innocent curiosity would awaken something sinister within a darkness that had lain dormant, waiting for a spark. As they edged closer to the church, its tall, broken steeple clawed at the slate-gray sky, as if begging for escape from the entrapment below. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen force. They felt it, a tension that sent shivers down their spines. The children exchanged wary glances but shrugged off their unease, giggling nervously as they ventured through the splintered doors, pushed open by an unseen hand that whispered, "Come closer." Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Once vibrant tapestries hung limp and forgotten, while layers of dust coated the old pews with a thick shroud. Each creak of the floorboards reverberated like a heartbeat. Shadows danced in the corners of their vision, whispers that floated like the fragmented prayers of a forgotten congregation. They discovered bizarre artifacts hidden within the crumbling walls, fragmented stained glass that seemed to shimmer and shift when unobserved, an altar shrouded in dust that radiated a magnetic lure, and cryptic symbols etched deeply into the wood of the pews, hinting at an origin far darker than their innocent minds could fathom. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed, reverberating through the hollow space, and a chill coursed through Jake and Lily. They gasped, frantically exchanging wide-eyed glances filled with fear. "Did you hear that?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. Just as they decided to retreat, a whisper slithered through the room, "Stay, you are chosen." Before they could process it, the atmosphere transformed, an oppressive weight pressed down as if the church itself was alive, watching them. Shadows flickered at the periphery, creeping closer to envelop them. As they stumbled backward, paralyzed by fear, they felt an inexplicable pull, dragging them further into the church's dark embrace. Outside, as the sun slipped below the horizon, ghostly sounds filled the crisp autumn air, muffled cries, faint laughter that twisted into screams, blending with the everyday noises of coats rustling and children playing. At the heart of the hollow, Sarah felt a shiver crawl along her spine. Something was amiss. She had trusted this neighborhood, these people, the very fabric of Millbrook Hollow. But now, her instinct screamed to protect her children. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah uncovered the chilling connection between the church and a town figure she once revered. Her heart raced as she pieced the secrets together, layers of charm concealing a predator hidden in plain sight. "What had I missed?" she whispered to herself, haunted by disbelief. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As she mustered the courage for confrontation, a voice echoed from the shadows, "You've gone too far to turn back now." The church doors creaked shut, trapping her in an inescapable labyrinth of horror. With icy dread crawling up her spine, she realized the stakes were higher than she or her children could have ever imagined. In that moment, beneath the moonlight streaming through the broken rafters, Sarah understood that they weren't alone. The true hauntings of Millbrook Hollow were just beginning to unveil their terrifying grip. Would she uncover the truth before it was too late? Or would the darkness claim her family before dawn? Sarah's heart pounded heavily in her chest, each beat echoing like a drum signaling doom. Shadows grasped at her, thick and cold, creeping around her ankles and pulling her deeper into the church's bowels. Panic clawed at her throat. "Jake! Lily!" she screamed, voice cracking against the oppressive silence. Where are you? The church felt alive, pulsating with a dark energy that pressed against her. She took a step forward, unsure of what awaited her in the depths. The stillness was maddening, broken only by the distant whispering that seemed to wrap around her. You should have stayed away. Desperation clawed at her as she charged through the nave, her eyes searching frantically for her children. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shapes against the peeling walls, forming faces that twisted in agony. Were they watching her? Judging her? Her breath quickened, each inhale a struggle as dread mounted. Just then, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a flash of blonde hair darting into one of the side rooms. Lily. Sarah ran toward the sound, propelled by instinct. She pushed through a heavy wooden door, the kind that felt like it had not been opened in centuries. It creaked ominously, and the air inside was stale, thick with despair. Lily. She called. Please, answer me. The dim light barely reached the far edges of the room, leaving a haze of darkness where dreadful things could lurk. It was as if the very walls held their breath, waiting for something her, or possibly something else. A soft whimper pulled her toward the room's end. There, Lily crouched beside a broken altar, her small frame shivering. Mommy, she whimpered, eyes wide and terrified. It's so scary here. I don't like it. Lily's expression chilled Sarah to her core. Though terrified, her daughter seemed entranced by something shimmering on the altar, a fractured piece of stained glass that reflected fleeting lights, beckoning her closer. Sarah hesitated but then knelt beside Lily, willing herself to remain calm. Before Sarah could pull her daughter away, the shadows twisted abruptly, forming sinister shapes that moved closer. You have awakened the slumbering ones, a voice hissed, echoing from every corner of the room, overpowering her senses. The air grew cold, biting at her skin as if an unseen force swept through. No! Sarah shouted, grabbing Lily's hand, intending to pull her away. But another presence reached out, stronger and colder, whispering promises soaked in malice. Come. Join us. Shadows swirled, and Sarah felt the overwhelming urge to submit, to give in to whatever dark lure pulled at her mind. She fought against it, shaking her head violently. No. I will not. With renewed determination, she yanked Lily up, ready to flee when the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous boom. The entire room shuddered, shaking dust from the rafters. Sarah spun, terror surging through her. Let us go. She cried, voice hoarse, her composure fraying. Her heart raced with an adrenaline-fueled panic. Suddenly, from above, a spectral figure appeared, an old priest dressed in tattered vestments, his face twisted in an eternal scream. Bound forever. He shrieked, his voice reverberating through the chamber. The children were trapped in the church's dark past, a past that screamed of unspeakable rituals and lost souls. As the floor trembled beneath them, the oppressive force escalated, swirling violently around Sarah and Lily. The air thickened, and shadows danced dangerously close, closing in like a predator circling its prey. Run! Sarah urged, pulling Lily toward the nearest exit. Desperation fueled her as she tugged fiercely, but the walls seemed to thrum with despair, sealing any chance of escape. The priestess' voice echoed one last time, "It is too late." All at once, an unseen force froze Sarah and Lily in place, leaving them powerless against the gathering darkness. The church erupted with a cacophony of screams and laughter, the air shuddering with pure terror. Sarah realized the truth: they were in a fight for their very souls. Would they be able to escape the church's treacherous grip, or were they doomed to become another lost story within its cursed walls? As darkness loomed over them, it beckoned for one final sacrifice. The shadows pulsed, a living entity hungry for despair. Sarah felt their cold, clammy fingers wrap around her throat, squeezing tighter with every agonizing second. She could hardly breathe, could hardly think. Every moment felt like a lifetime as she fought the binding sensation pulling her into the depths of despair. Lily, hold tight. She gasped, squeezing her daughter's hand. A low growl reverberated through the air, sending ripples of fear down her spine. The priest-like figure loomed closer, his eyes reflecting an abyssal darkness as he raised a skeletal finger towards them. Your souls are forfeit. You should have never come seeking salvation. No. We don't belong here. Sarah shouted, her voice trembling yet fierce. The urgency surged through her as she looked down at Lily, whose small frame trembled violently, a mirror of her own terror. We have to get out. We have to. The air shifted, thickening as whispers filled the space around them. Each word wrapped around Sarah's mind, whispering secrets of suffering and lost hope. The flickering candlelight dimmed further, casting monstrous shadows that danced across the walls, relentless in their pursuit. Leave while you still can, a voice rasped, sounding strangely familiar yet warped. Mommy, I'm scared. Lily whimpered, her grip tightening. Sarah looked into her daughter's eyes, seeing fear mixed with something deeper, an uncanny wonderment towards the darkness. Look at the light, Mommy, Lily pointed towards the shattered glass, which shimmered strangely, almost calling to them. No. Sarah yanked her daughter back. That's not light, it's danger. But the pull of the light was magnetic, a vivid lure digging into Sarah's resolve. She stumbled back instinctively, her heart racing, an indescribable terror coursing through her veins. She could feel the weight of the church pressing down on them, each breath growing heavier, suffocating under the weight of the past. Suddenly, the floor beneath her shifted, as if the very ground had moved to reveal a dark, gaping void. Stay away from there. Sarah screamed, but the primordial darkness seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, resonating with an ancient hunger. Join us, the whispers grew louder, echoing in her mind. Faces twisted in agony swirled within the darkness, flickering memories trapped in time. A woman's piercing scream cut through the air, mixing with the sounds of soft laughter that looped like a cruel reminder of lost joy. Mommy! Lily cried, her small voice tremulous. Then, in an unexpected moment, she pointed again. But look at the faces, Mommy. They're sad. They need help. Help? Sarah's heart raced. What kind of help can we give? They're trapped. The thought of helping anyone but herself and Lily felt insane. But Lily's eyes glimmered with a bewildering mix of pity and fascination that made her uneasy, questioning everything. Mommy, we have to help them. Lily insisted, her voice unwavering yet haunting. They've been alone for so long. We can't leave them. Panic surged through Sarah. She felt the shadows clawing at her mind, feeding on this new fear. No. We are not here to help a single soul. We need to escape. But the church had its grip on them, binding them in its swirling vortex of despair. Just as resolution began to claw its way into her mind, a fierce light erupted from the stained glass, cascading through the darkness, illuminating the chamber with a blinding radiance. Look at what you've awakened. The priest screeched, his voice reverberating like thunder. It will consume you. The ethereal light spread, casting away shadows, but instead of relief, Sarah felt worse. The light was alive, and it revealed everything: the hallway that led deeper into the church, and the other spirits trapped within those walls, mouths agape in silent screams. Mommy, we can't just leave. Lily's voice was firm as a weight pressed on Sarah's heart, a heaviness laden with dread and truth. Faced with the brutal reality of her daughter's words, Sarah's breath quickened again. Had they truly awakened something? Was the escape even possible? A moment of clarity broke over Sarah like a wave crashing onto a rocky shore. She felt the urgency rise in her chest, the need to protect her child and herself from what lurked in the unknown, a dark truth that lingered just out of reach. Yet, before she could make her move, shadows coiled back tighter, dark laughter ringing like a death knell all around them. Out of the light, the faint echoes called her name, promising clarity in that moment. A scream pierced through the darkness, snapping Sarah out of her thoughts. Was that Jake? With dread pooling in her stomach, she spun toward the sound, heart racing. What had become of him? And how could she save him now? The answers lay somewhere ahead or perhaps within the darkness that awaited them. Would Sarah push forward into the unknown, or would fear claw her back into the abyss? The echo of the scream faded into a haunting silence, and Sarah instinctively tightened her grip on Lily's hand. The oppressive air thickened around them, swirling with suffocating dread, each breath a struggle against the weight of despair. She could still feel the cold tendrils of shadow clinging to her skin, whispering lies, shrouding her thoughts in a haze of despair. "Mommy, what do we do?" Lily's voice trembled, cracking like fragile glass. Sarah's throat tightened. "We find him," but before she could gather her thoughts, the shadows pulsed again, surging forward in a wave, hungry, fierce, relentless. Memories clawed at her mind, memories of Jake, his laughter, his smile, the way he held both her and Lily close. A knot of anxiety twisted in her gut. Had they driven him away? Was he already lost? The priest-like figure glided closer, his skeletal presence weaving through the dark, a hunting specter ready to claim its prey. "You cannot help him," he crooned, the words chillier than the air surrounding them. "He belongs to the darkness now." "No!" Sarah shouted, her voice cracking, panic igniting a spark of defiance. "He's not theirs." The light from the stained glass flickered unnervingly, illuminating the agony etched across the faces trapped within the walls. They stared at her as if pleading for release, and with each heartbeat, the shadows grew bolder, encroaching, suffocating. "Mommy!" Lily urged again, wresting her hand from Sarah's grasp and stepping forward, her small frame unyielding. "We can't let them take him." With a renewed sense of urgency, Sarah gritted her teeth, a wild determination coursing through her veins like liquid fire. "Stay close," she barked. The shadows hissed, drawing back momentarily as if surprised by her resolve. And in that fleeting moment, she torn her gaze away from the darkness and focused on the flickering light ahead. "Follow me," she commanded, her heart hammering in rhythm with the relentless pulse of the darkness. The walls closed in, echoing with despairing whispers that lured and taunted. "Help us, be one of us," fear clawed at her mind, but beneath it, a flicker of hope ignited. They had to move, had to find Jake. With Lily following closely behind, Sarah took a deep breath and plunged forward, the stench of mildew and decay filling her nostrils. Each step felt like a descent into madness, the air thickening like syrup pulling her down into dark waters. Suddenly, a door creaked open to reveal a long, dimly lit corridor. The flickering light invited them in, sparkles of hope dancing through the heavy gloom. Yet, as Sarah stepped through the threshold, her foot seemed to sink into something sticky and wet. A squelching sound echoed as she lifted her foot, revealing a patch of black ooze that clung stubbornly to her shoe. "What is this?" she muttered, horrified. As she turned, the shadows in the doorway quivered, as if eager to pull her back and trap her in their suffocating grip. "Mommy!" Lily cried, a hint of terror creeping into her voice. "Stay here!" Sarah shouted, glancing back down the corridor, feeling the approach of an unseen tide. It was becoming harder to resist. The sound of Jake's voice echoed faintly in her ears, sweet words intertwined with sinister laughter. "Jake!" she called, desperation spilling forth. "Where are you?" "Mommy, I don't want the shadows to take you." Lily tugged at her sleeve, panic flaring in her eyes. In that moment, she caught sight of a shadow, moving faster and faster down the corridor, a figure twisting and writhing against the glowing light. "Jake!" Sarah screamed, her heart plummeting as the elongated silhouette began to dissolve into the darkness. "Mommy!" Lily's voice was filled with despair, but Sarah's will ignited anew. She felt her soul roaring back against the pulsing darkness, refusing to be bound by its clutches. She stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, ready to fight. "I'm coming for you, Jake." The darkness surged, shrieking with rage, but ahead lay the path leading deeper. Would it be salvation or doom? As Sarah charged forward, shadows loomed closer, there. Whispers fevered, clawing for her attention, and then, the darkness began to explode around them, scattering like ash on the wind. Shapes emerged from the shadows, shifting and flickering, forming an all too familiar face. Was it a trap, or the very salvation she sought? "Mommy!" With terror gripping her heart, Sarah turned, eyes wide in disbelief. Was that Jake calling her name? As the grotesque figures pressed in, the truth began to unravel. What lay ahead could either save them or drag them all into the void. The moment froze. Sarah's heart raced, caught between the pulsing darkness and the flickering light that shaped the figure before her. Jake? Was it really him? The shadowy visage twisted, showing flashes of Jake's familiar features. But his eyes, they burned with an unnatural, ghostly glow, hollow and filled with sorrow. "Mommy! Help me!" The plea, so close, shattered her resolve. But the laughter, tainted and mirthless, intertwined with his cries. It slithered around her, freezing her skin. Suddenly, the shadows surged forth, indistinguishable fingers reaching for Jake, and for her. "You shouldn't be here," his voice trembled, and for a fleeting moment, the flickering light revealed something deeper in his gaze, a flicker of the boy she adored. "I can't hold them back." "No!" Sarah cried, breaking free from the trance. The shadows didn't know her fighting spirit, they couldn't take her family without a fight. She plunged forward, desperately trying to bridge the gulf between her son and the darkness. Every instinct screamed to turn away, to flee, but her heart drove her on. "Keep your eyes on me, Jake. I'm here." The shadows writhed like a storm at sea, thick and oppressive. They were desperate, feeding on her fear, closing in like a vice. As she neared Jake, a cold wave swept through her, chilling her to the bone with its suffocating embrace. "Mommy," he gasped, a cry of pure heartache, echoing through the hall. The agony in his voice clawed at her chest. "They want me." Without thinking, Sarah lunged forward, grabbing his arms, feeling the coldness emanating from him. It was as if the shadows followed every movement, howling in protest. "Stay with me. We'll fight." But as she held on, his form flickered against her grip, oscillating between reality and the darkness writhing around them. Then she saw it pulsing within the shadows, a grotesque heart, oily and visceral, throbbing as if the darkness were alive. It was feeding on despair, thriving on her terror, craving her soul. Sarah's resolve hardened. "I will save my son," she shouted, and the words rang out like a challenge. The shadows recoiled slightly, a shudder coursing through their dark mass at the sound of her defiance. She raised her voice, refusing to be silenced by the weight of despair. "You won't take him. He is mine." In a whirlwind of motion, she pulled Jake closer, the warmth of his spirit flickers more potent than the encroaching cold. As they formed a tether of hope, she understood that this connection, their love, was a weapon against the dark, but the shadows writhing beside them were relentless. They clawed, shrieked, seeking to wrench them apart. Dark voices whispered secrets, twisted tales of anguish and loss. "Join us, become one with the shadows." A sliver of doubt slithered into her heart. What if she couldn't save him? What if the darker lure in her son's eyes twisted into the very shadows seeking to claim him forever? "Look at me, Jake." Her voice was raw, but the strength behind it was pure. The warmth of their bond illuminated the darkness momentarily, as rays of light cut through shadows, revealing terrified faces trapped within. Each one longing for freedom, and then she noticed something, a small, glimmering object at Jake's feet, something that gleamed like a drop of light amidst the shadow. It pulsed softly, calling out as if it too craved liberation. "Jake!" "The light!" Sarah cried, and in that instant, she felt the energy swell. Maybe this was a talisman, a spark to fight back. But were they strong enough? As they both reached for it, shadows screamed, a wailing chorus of rage that reverberated off the walls. Together. She grasped Jake's hand tightly, hoping that this moment would be enough. Would they break free, or would they succumb to the consuming void? The answer hung in the air, thick with a desperate tension. The obscuring shadows coiled around them like snakes, closing in with an insatiable hunger, demanding their despair. In a heartbeat, everything rested on that single moment of choice, the thin line between salvation and eternal darkness. The question persisted as the shadows came crashing down: would they seize the light or be lost to the shadows forever? In that frozen moment, everything shifted. The shadows surged forward, claws of darkness grasping at Jake and Sarah. Their connection flickered like the dying embers of a fire, a fragile hope against the all-consuming dark. Jake's gaze searched hers, terror reflected in those haunted eyes. "Mommy, I can't," his voice trembled, nearly swallowed by the howling mass around them. But Sarah refused to back down. "Yes, you can. We can fight them together." She gripped his hand tighter, summoning the warmth that had once filled their home. As they reached for the glowing object, the shadows howled louder, their rage a tangible force. The moment Jake's fingers touched the light, it surged into a blinding brilliance, cutting through the enveloping mist and illuminating their surroundings. The spectral faces that wailed in despair shimmered in the light, revealing their distorted features, twisted, lost souls begging for release, trapped like moths in a spider's web. "Touch it, Jake. Touch it now." Her voice was a roaring command, cutting through the cacophony. In a heartbeat, Jake's fingers connected with the warmth of the light. It flared up, a vibrant pulse that shot through the oppressive shadows, igniting something deep within the darkness. Sarah's heart raced as the ground beneath them trembled, and the shadows writhed as if struck. Shadows shrieked, their forms contorting and dissipating. For a brief moment, she believed they might escape. But then an ear-splitting roar echoed through the hall, a sound that made her stomach twist. The shadows recoiled, gathering strength, swarming even more aggressively around them, fueled by fear. A dark figure materialized at the epicenter, a towering silhouette more ominous than the rest, eyes glowing a sickly yellow. It locked onto them, its presence so heavy it felt like a storm pressing down. "You dare challenge the darkness?" It hissed, its voice an icy whisper that slithered into her bones. "You cannot keep him. You are too weak. He belongs to us. Get away from my son." Sarah shouted, her defiance shattering the momentary silence. But the shadows surged again, and she felt the vibration of their anger crackle around her. The light flickered, consuming them slowly but not nearly fast enough. Despair seeped in, following the slow pulse of the shadows. Sarah's breath quickened, panic rising. She felt the creeping cold seep into her skin like a relentless chill. "Mommy. I'm scared." Jake's voice wavered, and the flicker in his eyes dulled. The battle between hope and despair played out right before her. "Fight, Jake. You need to fight." Sarah pleaded, her grip never loosening. "Remember the stories I told you? Remember our adventures? You can do this." At that moment it was as if a dam had broken. The light pulsed fiercely, struggling against the darkness. She felt Jake respond. His small fingers gripped the light tighter, determination stirring in his soul. Suddenly, with a furious howl, the dark entity lunged forward, attempting to suck the light away. But just as they were about to be engulfed, Jake unleashed a scream, a raw sound filled with pure emotion. As if responding to him, the light exploded in a wave of warmth, pushing back against the shadows that clawed at their existence. The faces of the lost souls shimmered, caught in the light, transforming into pink and gold ribbons of hope. Instead of crumbling under pressure, Jake glowed, his tiny frame radiating strength. "I won't leave you. We are together." And then came the unexpected. A surge of energy surged through them, a force that propelled them off the ground and sent them spinning upward, breaking free from the clutches of despair. But as the shadows retreated, the dark figure let out a furious wail. The realization hit Sarah. They weren't safe yet. The darkness would return, angrier and more desperate than before. Above them, the ceiling cracked, an ominous sign that the shadows were regrouping. Panic bubbled up as she glanced at Jake. "We need to find a way out." Now. But fresh shadows began pouring back in, seeping through the cracks. Clawing back to reclaim what they had lost. "Mommy, look." Jake pointed toward an opening, though it was engulfed in darkness. She squinted, dread pooling in her stomach. "Together." She shouted again, pushing toward the unknown. But as they stepped forward, a shadowy tendril lashed out, gripping Sarah's ankle. She stumbled, the light faltering. "Mommy!" Jake cried, his eyes wide with fear. Would they find their way out, or would the darkness consume them both? In the chaos, one question arose in Sarah's mind, echoing through the hall, louder than the tempest of shadows. What if escaping this darkness meant facing an even greater horror? The grip of the shadow was like ice, cold and suffocating. Sarah felt herself being pulled back into the dark, the light flickering desperately as if it was aware of its impending doom. "Hold on, Jake. Don't let go." She screamed, willing her body to break free from the clutches of despair. Tendrils of darkness wrapped tighter around her ankle, pulling with an unforgiving strength. Panic clawed at her throat, the shadows whispering dismal secrets in her ears, promising the end of everything she loved. But in her heart, a spark of defiance ignited. She focused on Jake, on his terrified face illuminated by that fragile light. With all her might, Sarah yanked her foot free. The shadow recoiled, howling in rage, giving her a moment to regain her footing. "Run!" she shouted, and they dashed forward, but the darkness didn't relent. It swarmed around them like a living thing, hungry and relentless. "Over there." Jake pointed to a narrow hallway just off to their right, shrouded in deep shadows but promising escape. Sarah nodded, a mix of dread and determination pushing them both forward. They squeezed through the oppressive darkness, the air thickening with palpable fear. As they entered the hallway, the shadows lashed out from all sides, each tendril a dark reminder of what they faced. Sarah reached for the light, grasping it tight against her chest. It pulsated, sending waves of warmth that momentarily pushed back the encroaching gloom. "Keep it close," she urged, her voice trembling. They sprinted down the twisting corridor, the shadows howling behind them with a fury that made Sarah's heart race. She could feel their presence, teeth sharp and hungry, nipping at their heels like wild dogs, but just as hope began to flicker in her chest, they came to a sudden stop. The hallway opened into a cavernous chamber looming before them. The shadows coalesced into a single mass, forming that terrifying figure they had faced earlier. Its eyes flared, burning with a sickly rage, a storm of darkness emanating from its very core. "You cannot escape. You are mine," it hissed, its voice like ice razors scraping over stone. "What do we do, Mommy?" Jake's voice quivered, panic swirling in his eyes. He darted behind her, small hands trembling, and instinctively, she turned, positioning herself between him and the encroaching dread. "Believe in the light, Jake. It's our only chance," she shouted, drawing strength from his presence. The glowing object surged in her grip, a beacon against the merciless storm of shadows. With a fierce shout, Sarah stepped forward, raising the light high. "No! You will not take him." The light flared, illuminating the chamber in a brilliant white, forcing the shadows to writhe and shriek in agony. But the figure only laughed a low, mocking sound that sent chills racing down her spine. "You think this light can save you? It is nothing compared to my darkness." The chamber began to quake, walls rumbling, faint cracks racing through the stone. A fierce wind howled, driving the shadows forward, eroding the barriers between them and complete oblivion. Realizing they had only minutes before they were overwhelmed, Sarah turned back to Jake. "We need to find a path out of here. That way." She pointed to the far end of the chamber, where another passage seemed to shimmer briefly in the light. They bolted. The shadows surged behind them. They could feel the darkness, biting at the edges of their very souls. "Mommy, I'm so scared," Jake cried, his small legs pumping to keep pace. "Stay close," she shouted, glancing back, feeling the weight of the dark entity stalking them. Its laughter echoed cruelly in the air, wrapping around them like a noose. Just as they neared the passage, a thick wall of shadow lunged at them, its form coiling and twisting like serpents. Sarah felt a sharp tug at her heart. "Jake!" she shouted instinctively, but as she dove forward, the darkness wrapped around her, desperately trying to pull her back. Her heart sank, a profound fear more pervasive than anything she had faced. No! Not like this. The embrace of shadows tightened, and the light began to dim. Would Jake make it to safety? Would she be left to face the darkness alone? The shadows grew heavier and darker, and suddenly, in the depths of despair, Sarah felt something shift within her, the beginnings of an unyielding rage igniting just as the darkness crested to swallow them whole. In that moment, a voice whispered within her mind, what if the shadows held secrets far more terrifying than anyone could imagine? The shadows closed in, their cold touch creeping up her legs, wrapping around her like a serpent squeezing its prey. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, each beat a desperate rallying cry against the creeping darkness. She felt the icy breath of the shadow entity on her back so close that it made her skin crawl. "Jake!" she screamed again, panic spilling from her lips. Her voice echoed into the vastness, swallowed almost immediately by the sinister laughter ringing in her ears. Every muscle in her body shouted to flee, to give in to the urge to run, but she felt rooted to the spot, ensnared not just by the shadows but by the weight of fear that gripped her heart. Suddenly, she heard a loud crash. Startled, she turned her head. In her peripheral vision, she saw something shimmering just beyond the darkness, a reflection of the light she clung to. But her vision was blurred by tears of fear and desperation. Was it real? "Mommy! Help!" Jake's voice was a strangled whisper, full of helplessness. The thought of losing him ignited a fire in Sarah. She pulled against the dark, yanking with every ounce of strength she had left. And suddenly, the shadows pulled back. "Run!" she yelled, grabbing Jake's small hand. They barreled toward the passage she had seen before, a burning hope igniting in the pit of her stomach. But as they ran, the shadows screeched, the sound clawing at their ears, washing over them like a tsunami of terror. Just as they reached the passageway, a darkness shot from the walls, ensnaring Sarah's wrist. She stumbled, pulled backward. Jake wrenched her hand free, eyes wide with sheer panic, and a wave of guilt washed over her. "I want to leave you. This way," she urged, her voice fierce, even as fear whispered doubt in her ears. They ducked into the passage, the light flickering like a dying star behind them. For an instant, Sarah felt hope blossom inside her. It was a narrow corridor, built from rough stone and smeared with what looked like centuries of grime. "It's not over!" Jake screamed, still clinging to her hand, pulling her with frantic energy. A reflection, a door. A massive wooden door loomed at the end of the corridor, covered in intricate designs. But time was unraveling, shadows swelled behind them, howling with fury. She dared not look back. "Quick!" she shouted, urging Jake onward. They reached the door just as the darkness curled and writhed behind them, a tidal wave of shadow threatening to consume them both. Sarah pushed against it, heart roaring, urgency clawing at her insides. "Please!" she begged silently, her fingers trembling as she grasped the rusted handle. It was cold, bitterly cold, as if it were imbued with the essence of the shadows themselves. With a heave, she pulled it open. A blinding light spilled out, warm and welcoming. But she could feel the tendrils of shadow brushing against her ankles, pulling her back as the figure roared in frustration. "Step into the light," Sarah commanded, voice rising above the chaos. Jake didn't hesitate. They launched through the doorway together, Sarah praying the light would be enough to keep the darkness at bay. As they crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous bang, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. They landed on the cold stone floor of a small, dimly lit room. Breathing heavily, Sarah turned to examine the room, every instinct poised for danger. What is this place? Jake's voice quivered, his eyes darting around, scanning the corners, but as her gaze lingered on the walls, a sense of horror washed over her. The room was covered in drawing scratches that told stories of pain and suffering, images of people entangled in shadows, eyes wide with terror. "Mommy, look!" Jake pointed, his voice piercing through her thoughts as his small finger directed her attention to one drawing in particular. A family, a mother with a boy, their faces twisted in fear as a dark figure loomed behind them. The chilling realization hit her: the shadows didn't seek to destroy. They sought to claim. What if they become the shadows? Sarah whispered. Horror curling her stomach as she remembered the entity's words. Suddenly, behind them, they heard a soft thrum, a tapping. Sarah swung around, eyes wide with terror. Could the door still be alive with that terrible force? What had they stumbled into? As the tapping grew louder, she felt the shadows beginning to seep through the cracks of the door behind them. They were not safe yet. Was there a way out of this nightmare, or was it just the beginning of a fate worse than death? The tapping turned into a scratching, nails clawing against wood and stone, a desperate, angry sound. Shadows danced across the room as if taunting them, flickering in and out of sight. Sarah pressed Jake closer, heart racing, breath quickening. The drawings screamed at her, crying out warnings filled with despair, hopeless faces trapped in their own nightmares. "Mommy, what's happening?" Jake's wide eyes searched hers for reassurance, but she could only shake her head, a cold sweat dipping down her back. She edged toward the door, the chilling sound growing more insistent. Each scratch reverberated in her bones, igniting her dread. "Don't move," Sarah whispered, gripping Jake's shoulders and guiding him behind a nearby stone pillar. They huddled in silence, hoping to blend into the shadows around them. The flickering light from above illuminated the door less and less, as if it were slowly dimming under the weight of the encroaching darkness. "Do you think it can find us?" Jake's voice trembled, small and fragile. "I don't know," she barely managed, forcing the words out, each one a hard truth to swallow. Moments passed, heavy with anticipation. The scratching stopped. The silence grew oppressive. Maybe they had escaped it. If she could just keep him quiet. They held their breath, eyes locked on the door, muscles coiled tight like springs ready to snap. Then came an unnerving voice, low and distorted, emanating from the darkness beyond. "You can't hide, little girl. I know you're there." Fear blossomed in Sarah's chest. It spoke as if it knew them, and she felt their eyes, the unseen, piercing through the door, drinking in their fear. "Let us move," she hissed. "We need to find another way out." Sarah carefully stepped from behind the pillar, pulling Jake with her. No longer could they linger in fear. The threat outside loomed larger than ever. The light was fading, but her eyes adjusted, revealing more details of the room: barren stone, flickering shadows. The broken remnants of hopelessness lingered like an unwanted memory. Sarah scanned for an alternate exit when something on the far wall caught her attention: a crack, a space barely wider than a sliver. "Over there." She pointed to it, and Jake nodded, his small figure trembling but resolute. As they crept closer, the shadows seemed to lean in, almost alive with malice. The door trembled, and behind it, the entity roared in frustration. "You'll never escape from me. I always claim what's mine." The voice boomed, shaking the air around them, its anger palpable. "Go," Sarah urged, picking up her pace. They reached the crack and squeezed through. Jake first, then Sarah followed. The darkness clawed at her heels, scratching at the air between them, as if trying to keep them confined. They burst into another corridor, barely wider than their shoulders. The walls were lined with portraits, eyes that seemed to weep shadows down the stone. The chill deepened as they moved, the entity's malice echoing from behind. "Mommy, it's getting dark." Jake's voice frightened her. She sensed it too. The walls felt oppressive, as if they were being buried alive. "We need to hurry." Panic surged, pushing her onward. They stumbled, breathless, and emerged into a larger chamber bathed in a grim, gray light. The air was heavy with the smell of damp stone and something sweetly rotten. In the center stood an altar, upon which lay a small, glimmering object. "What's that?" Jake asked, his voice thin, but before Sarah could answer, the shadows flickered violently around them, twisting and curling like venomous vipers. "Take it." A whisper echoed from the walls, coaxing them closer. "It will save you." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Could it be true? The shadows pulsed as if sensing her hesitation, and a wave of dread washed over her. What kind of salvation came from darkness? "Mommy, please," Jake urged, his grip tightening anxiously on her arm. They only had seconds to decide. But was it salvation they sought or another trap waiting to ensnare them? And as the whispers grew louder, Sarah took a step forward, her heart pounding with uncertainty. The shadows seemed to shiver, and behind her, the last slivers of light flickered dramatically. Was this the answer they needed, or would it be their doom? The shadows writhed around them, pressing tightly against Sarah and Jake. The whispering intensified, shifting into a cacophony of voices that clawed at their sanity. "Join us, help us, take your place." They were frantic and pleading, but layered with a darkness that sent chills spiraling down Sarah's spine. "Mommy." Jake's voice cracked. "What do we do?" Her heart raced. "We have to trust ourselves, Jake. This isn't salvation, it's a trap." She felt the weight of the past and present collide, binding them in this cursed realm. With a determined jolt, Sarah stepped towards the altar, clutching Jake's hand tightly. She had to resist the pull of desperation that surged within her. "Jake, repeat after me, we are not afraid. We are not afraid." Jake echoed, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. The shadows recoiled slightly, their advance stalling, as if they were confused by the light forming between them. "We'll take it," Sarah said, glancing at the glimmering object on the altar, both terrified and fascinated. "Is that going to help us?" Jake asked, still clutching tightly to her. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, "but we need to try. Together." They advanced toward the altar together, their urgency overpowering the whispers that congealed around them. The glimmering object, a small crystal, pulsed with a soft light, beckoning them closer. She reached out and picked it up, feeling warmth radiate from it. "Mommy, what is it?" Jake prodded, curiosity mixed with apprehension. "A piece of light," Sarah surmised, hopeful yet terrified. As if sensing her resolve, the crystal glimmered brighter. "Just hold on to this, Jake. Together, we can fight the darkness." But at that moment, as shadows surged and lashed out, the dark entity re-emerged, towering before them, malevolent fury twisting its features. "You cannot resist me!" It shrieked, fury blood-chillingly palpable. Just then, with an exhale of terror, Sarah raised the crystal high, light pouring from it, illuminating the room and piercing through the shadows that hung like fog. "No!" The darkness howled, recoiling from the radiant light. "Remember the stories," the love she urged, her voice a battle cry. "We are not lost." Jake whimpered, but the warmth from the crystal spread through him. "We are not lost." He echoed again, his small voice ringing with newfound strength. With that, the darkness writhed, stumbling like a frightened animal facing a higher power. The light from the crystal expanded, breaking the chains that had held them captive. Shadows hissed, their grasp slipping as they dissipated into wisps of despair. "Keep saying it, Jake. We are not lost," Sarah shouted, charging forward. She could feel the heat rising, the energy flowing between them, strong and fierce. "We are not lost. We are not lost." Jake shouted, tears streaming down his cheeks, but this time, they were tears of hope. As they moved together, the shadows shattered, melting away like morning fog in the sunlight. The dark figure's form contorted and collapsed, letting out a guttural scream. The room trembled, stone cracking as the shadows dwindled to nothing, retreating back to the void from which they came. "Sarah, look!" Jake pointed. Beyond the shadows, light broke through, a door opening wide, welcoming and warm. "It's our way out," Sarah shouted triumphantly, adrenaline flooding her veins. They sprinted past the remnants of darkness, feeling lighter with each footfall. The air filled with hope, sweeter than the scent of spring blossoms. As they approached the glowing threshold, breaking through, they found themselves outside the church, the autumnal sun casting golden rays across the lawn of Millbrook Hollow. The air was fresh, with vibrant colors everywhere blooming under the warm sunlight. Sarah collapsed to her knees, Jake tumbling beside her, relief flooding over them like a warm blanket. They were free. "Mommy," he sniffled, glancing back at the old church. "Will it come back?" Sarah shook her head, pulling him close. "No, Jake. It's over. We fought together, and we won." She cupped his face, her heart swelling with love and pride. "You were so brave." "Only because you were with me," he replied, and a smile broke across his face, an innocent reflection of the joy they had fought fiercely to reclaim. From behind them, the sun dipped lower in the sky, and shadows stretched long across the yard, but these were merely vanishing rays, playing tricks with the fading light. "Let us go home," Sarah said, standing up and brushing off her knees. Each step away from the church felt like a leap toward hope. A powerful bond lingered between them, tethering them in a way that no darkness could ever sever again. As they walked toward the embrace of their neighborhood, laughter filled the air around them, mingling with the whispers of the past. They were free at last from the shadows, and together, they would forge new memories brighter and filled with love. True salvation was theirs, and it would always start with a spark of light, no matter how dark the night. As the sun sank under the horizon, a whisper echoed behind them, soft yet potent, something from the church, something lost, now found. For Jake and Sarah, the fight was over, the shadows faded away, leaving behind a soft glow of resilience and love. But the story of Millbrook Hollow would always linger, echoing in the hearts of those who believed in the light. If you found this conclusion thrilling, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help support our work. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Let us know what you think. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because this is the moment to show your support and spread the light. Don't wait even one more second.